So I have a serious question to ask you. What's better than one jar of peanuts? 2 jars of peanuts. Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, the Yankees continue to slide down the division, find themselves in 3rd place in the AL East, so we'll check in on the team there and see if there's any way they can actually dig themselves out of the hole. But with that in mind, of course, you're hearing that Aaron Boone now on the hot seat. Perhaps maybe get let go just because, the Yankees have been struggling really since the entire summer, and it's not getting any better right now. And it should have been better there because we're just coming off the trade deadline. Now, we kind of talked about some speculation in the last episode. We'll actually quickly review all the moves because I'm sure you already heard all the moves already. But quick recap on all the moves Cashman made to sort of fortify this team hasn't exactly been helping. But there are some pieces of good news, so we'll cover that as well. Try not to make it too depressing this episode. Of course, the big man, Aaron Judge, back in the Yankee lineup. Didn't help in the first game, but nevertheless, good to see him back there. Kind of to see what the plan for him moving forward. You're with the team. Kind of covered a little bit in the last episode, but we'll kind of continue on that. And again, I want to sprinkle some happiness in there because right now it's been misery in Yankee land. We'll look at a couple of Yankees who have been doing well lately. One of them, of course, Anthony Volpe, who I've been beating up on a lot, both offensively and defensively. Because maybe the defense still has some blips there, but offensively actually turning it on a little bit if you haven't been paying attention. So we'll kind of look back at his last couple of weeks there and see he has been on the rise there. So at least some smattering of good news. And of course, Trent Grisham as well. Came on early in the beginning of the season. Kind of a little bit of quiet. He was dealing with the groin injury there, but really turning on late, especially with the home run ball. So we'll peek in on it as well there. So it's probably gonna be a lot of misery, a lot of anger towards Boone in this episode. Obviously, you got to place the blame on somebody, but we'll try to sprinkle in a little happiness. So got a little good package for you. But before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show, Section 420 Talkin Yankees podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcast. So, for example, after during the trade deadline, after every move, got a new episode up. I kind of give my review on that. So if you want to get my quick takes on things and have to wait a whole week for a new episode, I know you love to see me, but if you want to get my takes on things sooner, make sure you subscribe to the audio podcast version of the show, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And of course, here on YouTube, you should be subscribed already. If not, there's something wrong with you. Do it now. Subscribe. And if you're watching on TV, you got double duty. Subscribe to the audio podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcast, and subscribe here on YouTube as well. Get the whole enchilada. So if you were going to go back in a time machine, maybe back to maybe May, something we look forward here, we figured maybe the Yankees would be up at least 10 games in the AL East, everything would be fine. There's always bumps along the way, there's always someone has to go to the IL, but nevertheless, we never thought we'd see ourselves in this position right now where the Yankees are. So right now at this second, as I'm saying this, they're 60 and 54, so they're only 6 games above 500. Again, this is a team that was almost 20 games above 500 going back a couple of months ago, just to show how much if they've slid down there. And again, not only behind the Toronto Blue Jays by 6.5 games, but now you're looking behind the Boston Red Sox behind 3 games. So Boston actually quietly surging the whole way there and actually leapfrog over the Yankees. So now the Yankees have to contend with both hopping over Boston as well as the Toronto Blue Jays in order to get back to the top of the AL East. Now, I think they could do so still. So, I've been throwing out a lot of optimism. And so there's 48 games left to the season there. So there's enough runway for them to put it together and do it. But obviously, they got to play better. And you can see all around what's going on with this team. Mainly, you could point to a couple of different areas. Number one is the starting pitching. Just the quality collectively is not there as what it was a couple of months ago. Really, ever since Clark Schmidt went down and had to be removed from the rotation, then eventually needing Tommy John surgery. Really, the rotation hasn't been the same since. And you've just seen some, Max Fried, who is almost like someone you could automatically put a W in there. He has not been that same guy. He's been struggling a little bit lately. And obviously, we know the issue with his finger there and the blister and the cut thing like that. Is that still bothering him a little bit? Maybe. He hasn't been effective. Rendon hasn't been effective. He's been okay overall, but it's been more of a grind for him to get through some of these games. And of course, he was handed over a 6-0 lead in that one of those Marlins games there, and he couldn't hold it together. But overall, he's been okay for the Yankees. But if you look at the rest of the rotations, it's really been up and down. Louis Seal just joined the rotation. He also got bombed in his first game. Now, that was his debut for the season. You would think he'd be a little bit better than that. So I'm not going to put, let him get a couple more starts there. I'm not going to really judge the guy there. But it's a bad time to have your debut, and then you can't, get a win against the Marlins. Again, a team that you should easily been able to beat there. And Will Warren, you see him, he's up and down so far. He give you a good start, bad start. I think, really the jury's still out on him. And Cam Schillet, overall, he's been okay, pretty good for the Yankees overall, but doesn't seem like he gets enough run support there. But overall, collectively, the starting rotation, you're just not getting the same quality. So that's just one of the issues. And of course, one of the other issues, and we'll get into it later, has been Devin Williams, not effective lately in the ninth inning role. Now, when both Williams and Weaver kind of rolling well, Aaron Boone kind of said he'll go with the matchups, depends what guys there. And then gradually, so kind of Devin Williams took a stranglehold on that ninth inning role there, where pretty much Boone was going to him exclusively. Well, unfortunately for Devin Williams, looks like a pin hit that balloon over there has not been effective lately, and we're going to cover it a little bit later. Get to the point where they had to pull him, yank him out of the ninth inning role now, and that's just going to be up for grabs. Now, Cashman has brought in a number of bullpen arms there, so the original plan, again, we'll get into that later as well there, is to have a super bullpen of four guys who could ultimately close the game, which the Yankees technically do have, but right now, with Williams not effective right now, you would not want to give him the ninth ball in the ninth inning, especially now, not as he blowing the lead there, but giving up home runs, which you just can't do as a closer there. So you combine all that, and then you just have those days where you do get a good starting effort there, but then your offense just has a no-show, and the Yankees have had put some zeros up lately in terms of their offense, just not scoring any runs there. So this is a bad mix of a lot of stuff at a bad time, and again, it's putting Boone in the hot seat, because again, someone has to take responsibility for this. Not only this because you can't blame him for someone not scoring, but we've seen some of the miscues in the field there, defensive miscues. We saw with Jazz, that situation there in Miami, we got thrown off at first base there. So this looks like a team that's not prepared, kind of a little sloppy on the base there. And again, that kind of all goes to the manager there. But we'll talk about Boone a little bit later. But just the team collectively right now, they're in a bad place. But I think again, some of the positives you want to look at that, getting Aaron Judge back, I think that helps. How good is he? How is effectively? Is that elbow still bothering him a little bit? You would have to assume so. He's probably not going to play the field that much. So obviously now when he's in there as a DH, then you lose that Stanton at bat, which you don't want to lose because he's actually hitting well lately. Seems like every time he's in there, he hits a home run per game there. But so now that kind of hurts you a little bit in that aspect. But overall, I still think the Yankees have an opportunity to collect this all together. They brought a lot of new faces in here. Again, really with the bullpen most of all there. So I think this is a better team if you want to look at the names on the roster versus what they were, 2 or 3 weeks ago before the trade deadline. But obviously, they just got to start hit a gear, start getting it together. Kind of Aaron Judge, and maybe it's just saying as the captain, during the Toronto series, just before the trade deadline, kind of said, "Oh, we have a good run in us." He feels it. I mean, he's going to say that he's the captain of the Yankees, but that is trying to prove that. I mean, they have been terrible almost since June. So at some point, it has to turn around. I don't know when it is. We're kind of waiting for it to happen. You figure maybe it would have happened during the Tampa series when they took 3 out of 4 at Tampa at home, and then you had some good moves around the trade deadline, a lot of good feelings. But then you brought that into Miami, where you'd think there'd be a almost a home game for you. You're down there in Miami. It's either former New Yorkers or New Yorkers just going down in general. You figure it's almost like a home game for you there, and then you get swept there. So, you had all those good vibes. That you go down to Miami and you lay an absolute egg, and you continue to do so during the Texas series after that there. So at some point, though, they do have to turn it on. I think they would, just because the guys on the roster, you have too many good players for them to be just terrible too long. And no, you'll still have a Jazz, a hiccup there mentally, or you'll have a Volpe error here and there. It's just still going to happen. But collectively, just look at the roster, guys like Bellinger and so forth, Max Fried, like that. At some point, they got to turn around and get a little bit better. So I think they will get a little bit better, a little bit more competitive. But again, this is a matter of when they're going to turn it on. And you're running out of time right now. As I mentioned before, it's only 48 games left. So you have pretty much the rest of August to go. You have an entire September, so there's plenty of time to get hot there. And sometimes you don't want to get too hot too early there, because then you kind of cool off, and then some other hot team kind of swoops you in there. So if you time it right there and you want to be the hot team coming into September and October, that's where you want to be. But eventually the Yankees got to hit the gas pedal, and we just don't know when it's going to be, when's it going to happen, but it has to be pretty soon. I guess all amongst the misery lately we have to go through as Yankee fans, at least have a little bit good news. That's because the big man Aaron Judge, the captain, is back in the lineup. And again, that's after the 10-day IL stint with the right elbow flexor strain there, which luckily wasn't any tear there. We wouldn't need surgery. With that point, you just almost cancel the season. Goodbye at that point. But at least it gives the Yankees a little bit more hope to climb this really kind of some of the steep hole they've gotten themselves in here. Now in this first game, obviously you're not going to expect too much there. Went 0 for 3 or 2 strikeouts, but again he's just back in in the uniform there. And again, he didn't have any minor league rehab or anything like that. And we saw some footage of him during the Miami series taking a little batting practice, and again, I guess reporting no major injury or no pain there, so at least able to play through that. Now, my concern, of course, two things. Number one, obviously he's probably not going to be 100%. So if you want Judge, if the Yankees really want to get out of the hole I said they mentioned in, you kind of want 100% Judge to kind of steer that ship there. Well, we don't know what he's at. You got to assume maybe he's only about 85-90% of himself there. So that's a bit of a concern to just because you would want our Judge Judge 100%. And of course, the next one is, of course, him, pretty much right now relegated to as being a DH. They don't want him in the field there. They don't want to make any sort of strong throws and then re-aggravate that elbow. And the problem with that now is if he's the DH, then it takes Stanton's bat out of the lineup, who's probably right now one of the hottest hitters for the Yankees. It took him a while to sort of get on the home run roll a little bit, like, what's up with this guy there? But just before the All-Star break, again, he hit 3, and then after that, he's really been taken off. So at this point right now, Stanton hitting .268, 10 home runs. Again, it seemed like almost every time you put him in there, he hits a home run per game. So now, obviously if that spot's being taken up by Aaron Judge at DH, you're losing that at bat there. So that's a problem for the Yankees. Now, yeah, you can always bring him in to pinch hit later on in the game, but you just got one swing with the guy, and that's about it there, because he can't play a position. It's not like you could swap him in for the left fielder and maybe get him 2 or 3 at bats in that game. You're going to use him one time per game, sort of that, kind of that secret weapon you have in your back pocket. You can only use it once. So that's going to be the problem with Stanton there. You're only be able to use him once a game because Judge is going to take up the majority of those DH spots there. Now, maybe as the weeks go on, maybe Judge feels a little bit, but maybe he'll start playing the field okay there. But at least for the month of August there, you're probably going to lose a lot of bats to Stanton. That kind of is going to hurt the Yankee offense because, again, Stanton's probably right now one of the Yankees' hottest hitters there. So, Judge is going to have to make sure he contributes there because if he's going to take up the DH spot there, he also had to contribute, which I'm sure Judge will more on the left there, even if he's less than himself there. But he's still, he still has to, at least justify not using Stanton in that role. And it might be a little old news at this point there, but it's fair to look back at Cashman's moves at the trade deadline. They had a very, very successful trade deadline. I guess overall portfolio you put together. Would I give it an A+? No, but I think a solid B+, A negative if you want to be there. But we'll be a little tough markers there, so give him a good B+ there. But overall, I like what he did. He did take care of some issues, the main issues they had there. Now, did they bring in that big starting pitcher like a Sandy Alcantara there? No, but I don't think that was really necessary for the Yankees. I know I mentioned before, starting pitchers have been struggling a little bit with them, but of course the guys that got in there have been struggling a little bit. It's not like they needed to bring in an ace or something like that. Sure, would you like them? Yeah, but what you have to give up to get something like that, I just don't think it made sense for the Yankees, and plus you had Luis Hill coming back there. But the two main areas really for the Yankees really needed help with was third base and, of course, the bullpen. That was the main areas that the Yankees needed help with, and Cashman did a good job to solidify both there. And, of course, the Yankees had the whole issue with Jazz playing third because DJ was playing second there because DJ didn't want to play third there to start the season. And, of course, DJ was struggling there, so they ended up cutting him. And Peraza, who got an opportunity, he's gotten several opportunities for the Yankees, but he was out of options there and just hitting like a $157 there. You just can't be doing that. Defensively, it was okay there, but giving the Yankees really no offense, get to the point where the Yankees had to make a move there for third base. And, of course, that's when they brought in both McMahon and Rosario for that to solidify, at least have an everyday, most of McMahon's probably going to get the most of those starts there. Third baseman, you could pencil in there every day. And, of course, with that, Peraza became expendable, and obviously he was out of options and ended up just trading him to the Los Angeles Angels there. So, yeah, maybe he'll get an opportunity there. Maybe he'll flourish. Maybe he won't there. But, again, good move by Cashman for third base there. And, of course, the big one was the bullpen because the Yankees have been struggling with the bullpen. Obviously, with Loaiza, up and down of his effectiveness. Lately now, Devin Williams has been yanked out of the role there. Luke Weaver, okay, but he's not been as dominant as he was last season there. And, of course, you have all these guys up and down, like such as Ian Hamilton gives you a good start, bad start. Fernando Cruz, still waiting for him to come back from the IL. At the time, you had Mark Leiter Jr. coming, also on the IL, but, he wasn't really that, great either there. So, Yankees definitely need some help in the bullpen area, and that's what Cashman really excelled in there. So, bringing in the arms, because the big one was David Bednar, trading him from the Pittsburgh Pirates, bringing in Camilo Doval from the San Francisco Giants, and, of course, last Bird from Colorado Rockies, which really, really jumps at you. But in terms of his ERA, is on the high side. Like, why did they want this guy? But his swing, he does have, his swing and miss stuff was there. But unfortunately, that kind of petered out a little bit. So now, because they had to send him down to AAA, because he just had a miserable debut for the Yankees' first 2 games there. Gave up like 6 runs. We'll get into that a little bit there. But at least at the time, the moves they made there, at least when you look more at Bednar and Doval, you had a situation with those two, and plus what the Yankees already had with Weaver and Williams, where you almost have 4 guys, almost 4 closers there in the bullpen. And I think that's always been kind of Cashman's goal, kind of using what the Dodgers did last season. Last season, the Dodgers didn't really have a great starting rotation, but they had a bullpen where they could bring like 5 guys out, pretty much turning into a 5-inning game there. One guy after another just come and throw high gas and just basically blow guys away. I think that's what Cashman was trying to replicate, to have a similar thing. Have a starting pitcher go 6 innings there, and then once you get into the bullpen, you could bring out like 4 guys in a row with swing and miss stuff, and that's what Bednar and Doval mostly have, swing and miss stuff, just to go along with, as well as Weaver and Williams when his stuff is on. But unfortunately, Williams struggling a little bit lately. And what's good about this move with the 2 guys in the bullpen, not only the control for the rest of this season, but you've got him control in the future, because both Williams and Weaver are going to be free agents after the season, so possibly you might even lose both of them, maybe keep one of them. I don't think they'll sign both there, but at least with those guys leaving, you both have Duvall and Bettner at least to back you up for next season. So Benton will be under control for 2026. Then he'll hit free agency after that, so you got him for next year. And even better with Duvall, he's under control for both 26 and 27. So you have him control for 2 more years. So again, theoretically, he might be a closer for the next 3 seasons. Who knows? And of course, with Bird, same thing. He's in control for the next 3 seasons. So 26, 27, and 28. Now, obviously, his debut with the Yankees has not been good as well. As I mentioned before, he got sent down to AAA there, but let's assume he gets a little better. Again, this is a guy you also have a control for 3 seasons, and of course, mixing with that, Jose Cabrera, getting him from Tampa and actually trade him during the Tampa season while he was in town in New York there, so very convenient for him. And again, he's not a guy. He's not really an offensive player, but he's more of an energy, a stolen base guy, a speedster. So far this season has 35 stolen bases. Again, stolen bases aren't much of the Yankees game. I know Volpe and Jason Dominguez can swipe some here and there, a little sneaky fast, but other than that, Yankees aren't really known for the bases. Cabrera's a guy you could bring off the bench. Theoretically, someone gets a walk, he's on first base, he could swipe second there, he can put himself in scoring position, and also he could play the field as well, second base, shortstop, and a little bit outfield. Now, obviously, outfield, not a good debut for him. You saw that big blunder he had in the Marlins game there, let a ball go under his glove like a little leaguer there, and it is a totally miserable game. So he didn't really have a great debut for him. But overall, you just like what he could bring to the table, what he could bring in there, and I think it also puts a little pressure on Volpe, who again he struggles a little bit there. We saw with, not only with the batting average, with the fielding as well. Now it's funny enough when they brought this guy in, Volpe's actually started been doing a bit better, and we'll kind of highlight him later in the episode there. But he's a bit of a backup plan that to sort of keep Volpe on his toes a little bit. A little bit of Rosario. I don't think Rosario obviously would play. I mean, he played 1 game so far this season at shortstop, so he could take the role. And when he came up with the Mets, he was a shortstop there. So yeah, I like what Cashman bringing a guy like that in, just kind of keep Volpe on his seat, on his heels a little bit, to maybe worry about, hey, if I don't produce a little bit, I might lose my job there. So I like the pressure those 2 guys put on him. But Volpe has been doing a little bit better, at least offensively. So maybe it wasn't necessary, maybe it was. And of course, rounding out was Austin Slater, getting him from the White Sox. Obviously, the key with him, he can play all 3 outfield positions. He's a right-handed hitter, and he mashes up left-handed pitching. Same thing with Rosario. He's known for, as we covered it last time, known for hitting left-handed pitching there. And I guess maybe that's a need that Cashman saw with his team, getting dominated by lefty there. So you put these 2 guys in there at least to equalize that. But unfortunately for Slater, also not really the greatest debuts, after a couple of games, needing to go on the IL with a hamstring injury there. So, but kind of times Judge coming back there. So kind of interesting there. Now, the only thing that worried me a little about the Slater move is that, as a right-handed hitter there, does that mean maybe that could have been, a little concerned about Aaron Judge, that maybe Judge wasn't going to come back, or he wouldn't be fully himself, and kind of, Slater might be sort of a backup plan to Judge. Obviously, Slater can offensively do what Judge does overall, but again, at least as a right-handed hitter, if Judge would go down for any significant time, you would have another right-handed and Slater in there on the bench. So that concerned me a little bit there, but I guess maybe it was just a nothing burger there. He just got him anyway. But as I mentioned before, having to go in the IL. So, and a guy like that, again, he's like a 230 hitter. He has like 5 or 6 home runs, so he's not like a big power hitter there. But as a guy maybe you can bring off the bench, again, in a pitch hit situation, or for lefty, something like that, or maybe just a spot start once in a while. Again, but also defensively, he could play all 3 positions. Now, getting back to Bird, obviously, he probably had just about as bad as a debut you can for the Yankees. So his first 2 games, he gives up not only a grand slam, but then a game-winning 3-run home run there. So you can't get any worse than that. And you figure, what's up with this guy? Well, looks like his workload actually coming up even to that point there has been high. So kind of a little weird. I'm sure Cashman saw this before they made the trade for this guy. But right now, so collectively he has 55 1/3 innings pitched so far, and that's the 7th most in terms of workload for relievers this season. And even leading up to the 2 home runs he gave up in the Yankee uniform, his last 10 appearances, so this goes back to Colorado, pitching to a 24.43 ERA, and that's 19 earned runs in the last 7 innings. So he was struggling with Colorado before he came here and still struggling. So I think maybe with the workload he's had lately, maybe something to get it to him, not as effective. So the Yankees sending him down to AAA. Now they work on some things, but maybe just to take the workload off him for a couple of weeks, and then maybe you bring him back up here when he's kind of more of himself. Again, he's a swing and miss type of pitcher. Again, when he's on, he probably averages a little bit more than a strikeout per inning. So that's the stuff Cashman likes, and the Yankees in general like the swing and miss guys. Same thing with Bednar, same Same thing with Doval. Those are swing and miss pitchers. They don't pitch to contact. They get a lot of swing and misses, and that's what Cashman believes in. You can go back to like someone like Clay Holmes, for example. What they did with him, they kind of modified his pitching form to get a lot of swing and misses. Now, what that includes is throwing balls in the dirt and a lot of sinkers and sliders and stuff in the dirt. So you have to have a catcher to be able to get that. But the Yankees' philosophy, going back past several years, has been guys that throwing the balls in the dirt and getting swing and miss stuff. That's what the Yankees like. So those are the guys brought in there. So overall, collectively, I think Cashman did a really good job. He's fortified the team. He's brought a lot of good talent in, but so far it has not translated into wins. Pretty much Yankees haven't won any games at this point right now since they made any of these moves, which is incredible. Especially the fact that you had 3 games against the Marlins, a team that there were 3 games under 500 before you went down there, and again you lay a gigantic goose egg. But overall, you can't really put the emphasis on Cashman. The one move, maybe you say the Bird move. Hey, look, the guy's been struggling before you bought him here, and you bought him here, so you want to criticize him on that a little bit, okay. But the other guys, but all the other moves I say were pretty solid by Cashman there. Now, did he give you the big superstar Suarez? No, he ended up going with the Mariners there. But I just don't know, how much you want to give up to get a guy like that, and who's this going to be a 2.5-month rental? And I just don't know what move was out there. Was this sort of the 1996 when they brought in Cecil Field and kind of just it seemed like the team just took another step forward? No. Was it all like when they brought in David Justice in 2000? No, but still, I think he found some areas where the Yankees really had some holes, and he plugged up the holes there. So I say overall, kudos, good move by Cashman, and you can't have Yankee fans complain like, oh, well, Cashman they're not going for it, Hal's not going for it, they're cheap, blah, blah, blah. No, Cashman kind of went all in on it, and not only did he go kind of all in on it, really the Yankees didn't give up any of their really major prospects. Obviously, Spencer Jones will be untouchable, but obviously you still have him, and you didn't trade away someone like a Dominguez, who, you could say maybe he's a little disappointing in some ways not, but you at least want to hold on to him. You didn't have to get rid of the guy like that, so you pretty much kept all your guys. You gave up like your number 8 prospect in your system. That was probably, Flores, the catcher. That's probably the biggest name you moved, and was that really a big deal? Probably not there. So Cashman brought all these guys in, didn't really take on any bad contracts. You're not taking on a guy who has like $100 million and 5 years left on his deal. I mean, these guys are all pretty much, making peanuts, and most of them, again, are under team control for the next couple of seasons. So good trade deadline move by Cashman, but again, it has to pay off and translate into wins. So that hasn't kicked in yet, but, in terms of Cashman, he did his job. But the guy who's seemingly not getting the job done is manager Aaron Boone, who I like him. In the past couple of seasons when the Yankees have some cold spells or losing streaks in, people are like fire Boone, fire Cashman. I've never been on that bandwagon. Again, I don't really think that helps much. Again, I don't know really how much a manager really has an influence on a team so far. Just the day and age, the way it is now. Maybe back in the day it had more of a difference, but I don't know if it has much now. And I think overall, I think the players like him. I think really the front office likes him. Pretty much everyone likes him there. But maybe that's the problem there. Maybe he's too friendly with the players. Maybe he doesn't get on them, and that's why we see some of these mental errors and errors in the field there, and some of these bad decisions made. But ultimately, it all gets put on the manager. And I mentioned, if you listen to the audio podcast version of the show, a couple of days ago, I mentioned that I felt like really for the first time, his job might be in jeopardy. I know in previous seasons, people say it was. I never really got the feeling, because I always felt like Cashman and Hal were kind of on his side, and the players were on his side, and everyone was on his side. This time around, it might be. It's a little different. I think it finally might. The frustrations might be amount to a point where I could see possibly again for the first time they might consider moving him out of the manager's role there. Now you figure what difference would they can make with 48 games left? Is it even worth doing that? It's possible, because you got to shake up something. You can't fire the players. You can't fire Anthony Volpe, even though he's been doing better lately. I mean, you just got to show. You got to show. If you're Cashman, you got to show not only the players in the uniform, but also the fans as well, saying, "Hey, look, this is not acceptable. We got to do something." And who's held accountable, and it goes to the manager. Even though maybe Cashman and him probably make these decisions together, maybe a lot of these decisions will just come from Cashman at the top there, and Boone's just basically filling out what Cashman tells them. We don't really know what the inner workings are, but ultimately, someone has to take responsibility for what's going on right now. And to see with the Yankees, they've been one of the worst teams since June. And this is probably even worse than it was even a year ago when we thought that was bad. It's even worse now there. And they slipped down from a first place team there with a relatively 6.5 lead at a certain point there, to now dropping down to third place in the American League East. Again, not only behind the Toronto Blue Jays, but also now 3 games behind the Boston Red Sox. So you have that drop there. The fact that they've been probably the worst team since June, so it's not just something that's been going on just for a couple of weeks. I mean, this has been going on now for almost 3 months. They've been underperforming, not been doing well. And again, we see some of the mental errors on the field there. We see some of the physical errors there. So it's like, is this a team that's being coached right? Are they being trained right? Are they going with the fundamentals the right way there? And who's in charge of that? It all comes up to the manager. So at some point, again, if the Yankees can, this little really bad streak they've been on really continues, for another week or so, I can't see how you keep the manager in there. Now, financially, the Yankees, if you may recall, this offseason before the season started, they gave Boone a 2-year extension, so he's signed through 2026 and 2027. So if the Yankees do decide to part ways with him, they're going to have to eat 2 years and that money, which, they're not getting a ton of money, but again, you do have to make a move somewhere if this team's not responding. Who would take over the team? Absolutely probably the Brad Ausmus, the bench coach, who then he has major league manager experience, so he can do it. Will he make any of that difference? I don't know. I mean, probably the working relationship between him and Cashman would probably be the same there, and I don't know if that translates to the team performing better, but maybe the move would. I don't know. Maybe just pulling Boone out, maybe it just sparks something to the players like, wow, if the manager could go, and then maybe, I don't know, they start playing better. We just don't know what the mental makeup of that really does. And in terms of the timing, now you can go back to the Yankees in the late 70s. I know it's a different world, different planet there, but the Yankees won the 1977 World Series, had Billy Martin as the manager to start the 78 season as well. But of course, we know got off to a really bad start there. And of course, there were rumors that Steinbrenner was going to fire him, but Martin he stepped away from the team for health reasons, but of course, he was being pretty much told to leave, let go there by Steinbrenner. So now he stepped down on July 24th, 1978. So, about a week, if you want to go a week right back from this time there. So the fact that you could take a manager out that late again, this is the championship 1977 Yankee team. So, the Yankees made the World Series last year, but the Yankees were willing to let go of a manager, again, a different Steinbrenner, different regime. I get all that. But the fact that this guy won you a World Series, yet the next season the team wasn't doing well, they were willing to fire the guy. So, that can happen, and it can happen that late in the season. July 24th, August 1st, not that far off there. So could be around the same time if they wanted to do something with Boone to pull him out there. They could make that move. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. I mean, but if the losing continues, I think you just kind of have to, because you got to do something to show the players that they're not doing well, something's not wrong. You got to put someone else in there. So I don't think it would happen. But again, for the first time since all these fire Boone chants and all these people calling to the radio and posting online, fire Boone, get rid of Boone, I feel this is the first time it could actually happen. Just because this the way this team is slid down so vastly right now. Again, you're in third place in the AL East there, and you're getting to a point where you're almost lucky to get the wild card. And you see what the team's been doing lately. They've been kind of sort of trimming the fat, so to speak. You don't want to say bad, like, for example, DJ LeMahieu. Okay, they gave him a shot, wasn't performing, boom, DFA. They yanked him out, got him out of there. Same thing with Peraza. Even though you got an opportunity at third base, only hit like a $137, or I'm sorry, buck like 57 like that. You can't be doing it as a major league player. Traded him away to the Angels, and even looks like someone like Stroman, who he wasn't complete garbage when he came back. He was pretty serviceable to the Yankees, but he pretty much there was really no room for him anymore. And obviously you're not going to sit down Cam Schlitt. You're not going to send Cam Schlitt back down to the minors there when the guy's throwing 99 mile per hour darts there. He just hasn't really got much run support. And Will Warren, I know kind of the jury's still out on him a little bit, but overall you like his velocity, like the 98 mile per hour fastball. You still want to give him opportunities in the starting rotation there. So Stroman, the odd man out, so got rid of Stroman as well. And in previous season, cutting the fact with Hicks, getting rid of Donaldson, trading away Joey Gallo. So the Yankees have no problem getting rid of some guys that maybe they kept around a little bit too long. And so Boone could kind of be that next guy, even though he's a manager, not a position player, that where, again, if he's not getting the job done lately, they might have to cut him. I hope it doesn't happen, but it probably would. I guess the Yankee fans want to find some, little glitters of happiness, and we're going to highlight two players that again have been on a bit of the upswing. One of them quietly has been Trent Grisham. Remember, he got off to a really hot start, then kind of cooled down a little bit because he was dealing with the groin injury. Never really had any sort of major, injury, timeouts there, but nevertheless, it kind of took the bat a while to get going again. Has then kind of been the home run guy for the Yankees a lot of time leading off the game. So right now up to this point, hitting 245. 20 home runs, 44 RBIs. Again, you would not expect 20 home runs out of this guy when we started the season there. And again, as long as his groin, again, doesn't act up on him, seems like that's when, he gets a little bit more hitterish. And of course, the other one was, of course, Anthony Volpe, who have been probably beat up on a lot lately. Again, he's a bit of a Jekyll Hyde there because he'll have a low batting average, but then he'll bop you a home run there, so then you fall in love with him again. But overall, collectively, he's been doing well over the last 7 games, hitting 280, 7 hits, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs. But if you want to go back to, it's one good week, you're going to go the last 15 games, which is almost 3 weeks there. Then you look at hitting 250, all right, the batting average goes down a little bit, but 5 home runs, 7 RBIs, and 4 stolen bases there. So looks like he's on a bit of the upswing there, at least, with the batting average and some bopping some big home runs. And you look at that Tampa game, probably one of his, biggest home run probably of his career, hitting a 9th inning home run, at least to tie the game, and the Yankees were able to win it in extras there. So a lot of misery for the Yankees right now, but there's at least 2 bright spots to be happy about.